Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the podcast and the YouTube channel. Sal Vetri here, and we are going to be breaking down today the 6-game slate. The NBA is back, a week off for the All-Star break, but we are now back. 6-game slate. It is Thursday, February 20th. I hope you all had a great break from the All-Star break, I guess you can say. NHL, PGA, whatever you were playing, XFL hopefully as well, dabbling in all those streets. But welcome back. Now we're going to break this down. But before we do, I want to say thank you all. Thank you all. We cracked the top 10 a couple days ago, like I've been saying, but maybe you've been taking a little bit of a hiatus from DFS with no NBA. At least some of my videos maybe, but we cracked the top 10 in podcast rankings for fantasy sports. Now we're dabbling in between the 10 and 15 range, but I do appreciate it if you're listening on the podcast right now. Please take a couple extra seconds to just hit the subscribe button on whatever platform you're using. And if you're on a platform like Stitcher, like Apple Podcasts, iTunes, if you're on one of those platforms where you can leave a review, just take those few extra seconds. If you're on the YouTube channel, you know what you can do to support me here. Hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. And if you're already a part of that group, thank you all so much. I appreciate you so much. So, with that said, you can find my Patreon exclusive content for today's NBA slate over on Patreon. That's where my projections already done for the 6 games. Interest pools already done. And let me tell you one thing. No, DraftKings did not take the All-Star break to try and tighten up their algorithm. No, everybody's underpriced. Everybody's underpriced. Guys that have, for the people who like the 5x value stuff, none of those guys at 5x are going to be meaningful today. 5.3x or better today. I have close to 30 guys projected for 5.3x or better. You want to see who? You can check it out on Patreon, but it's just going to be one of those slates where you can play anybody you want because DraftKings just did not care about changing or tightening up the salary. So with that said, we're going to go through the injury news like we usually do here on the podcast to start it up, and then we're going to get right into some of my early interest reasons as to why some players I'll be looking out for today. I do appreciate you being here. I will shout out Fantasy Draft. Fantasy Draft is going to be the sponsor of today's show and the NBA videos for the rest of this month. I do appreciate Fantasy Draft. Pretty much what they do is they support my show and they're giving back to really the DFS community. Now, if you care about Rake and that's something you care about, they give Rake free DFS over there. You just sign up for a subscription a month, and it honestly becomes less than 1% of how much you're going to pay in Rake. And Rake is something you don't really notice, but over the long term, you're getting charged interest of like 15 to 30% in DFS on Rake, and they're trying to say, you know what, you don't have that over here. So that's their promotional thing. It's how their company's built. It's not just going to be a gimmick for a month or a year or whatever it is to start up the company. So check out Fantasy Draft. I'll link their NBA lobby down below. If you click that link, it does help me. Just a disclaimer there. So, injury news. In Atlanta, Clint Capella is still not going to be playing, and he might be not playing for a couple more weeks. So, he got traded from this team from Houston, still has not played there in Atlanta. This is going to continue to help Dwayne Dedmon, who is now there, the center there, and has been playing before the All-Star break. John Collins might pick up more additional run at center as well. Damian Jones to a lesser extent. DeAndre Hunter was listed on the injury report as questionable with an ankle. We'll monitor that one. That would help other players get on the court a little bit more. Maybe your Vince Carter's, potentially Jeff T gets in the rotation a little bit more. In Brooklyn, Kyrie Irving still is going to be out indefinitely with a shoulder injury. Karis LeVert in a difficult matchup today against Philly. He will see a big bump in fantasy point per minute production as well as minutes, and then you'll get the exact same thing happening for Spencer Dinwiddie, more point per minute production for him. In Chicago, this is big news here because no Wendell Carter Jr. still after the All-Star break out with the ankle. No Chandler Hutchinson. He is now out as well, kind of the surprise inactive. Chris Dunn is still out at least 4 to 6 more weeks. His knee will be reevaluated. And Denzel Valentine is out with a hamstring. Hutchinson was the big one, small forward, power forward. They're just down a ton of bodies, especially their bigs. They're also down Laurie still for an undisclosed amount of time. So you're left now with your Cristiano Felicios, your Daniel Gaffords, who was injured before the All-Star break, really not playing. But I'm assuming he's going to be playing since they did not list him on the injury report. And then you also have your Luke Cornett. So those are your bigs right now. Thad Young to an extent, but he's probably going to have to pick up a ton more 3 minutes at this point when there's no Hutchinson. You might see some more Shaq Harrison because of that. So there's a lot of injuries to the front court in Chicago. Keep a close eye on that. That's going to impact this slate because guys like Felicio, guys like Gafford are the flat minimum at $3,000. If they play 20 plus minutes and potentially play 24 plus today, there's some of the better plays in the slate. Luke Cornett's in the 3K range as well. If he plays 24 plus minutes, like he's been consistently seeing, he's one of the better plays or at least values in the slate. In Detroit, Reggie Jackson, not going to play today because he got a buyout. Detroit bought him out, and now he's going to sign with the Clippers. Clippers are building some sort of super team there on both of their units. They now probably have one of the better backcourts that is on their bench in Lou Williams and Reggie Jackson, if that's how they're going to play it when Pat Beverly gets healthy. That's probably one of the better backcourts in the entire league, maybe a top 20 backcourt in the entire, or a top 15, top 10 backcourt in the entire league, and now that's on their bench. In Houston, well, I guess for Detroit, that'll help Bruce Brown. Derrick Rose, I'm going to assume it helps, but we'll see what the minutes look like. Before he came back, before the All-Star break, it was his first game before coming back from injury, was sort of limited. I don't know if they go full 32 minutes for him today, full 30. I have him at 28 currently, still looks good. In Houston, Eric Gordon is questionable, was missing some games before the All-Star break. It's going to help Daniel House the most. Daniel House will play 34 to 36 minutes if Eric Gordon doesn't play. If Eric Gordon does play, Daniel House will get dropped back down to like the low 20s at best. Tyler Hero is going to be doubtful, as well as Myers Leonard today for Miami. And then in Milwaukee, Kyle Korver will remain out, so this will give a little bit of a bump now, although George Hill is going to be returning, so kind of just split it up. It doesn't really matter too much, but it might take some minutes away from him. Sterling Brown with George Hill returning, maybe take the upside minutes away from guys like Wes Matthews, things like that. Alex Len will remain out in Sacramento as well with a hip, so you can continue to try and fire up Harry Giles and see how many minutes he plays. It is surely a guessing game. Target offense sheet, I'll just stop on it if people want to take a screenshot of it. The highest totals on the slate today are going to be Houston versus Golden State is the highest team total at 120.5. They're 9.5-point favorites. That is the late night 10:30 p.m. East Coast time hammer. And then the next highest are actually you get Miami in a really nice spot here. A pace-up spot of about 3.3 possessions I have. They're 6.5-point favorites versus Atlanta's atrocious defense, a 118.5 team total. Milwaukee, a 118.25 team total here is the third highest. The number one game on the slate would be Atlanta-Miami in terms of a 230.5 game total in that one. Again, Miami 6-point favorites. You get Atlanta with a 112 team implied total. So Miami looks like they're in a very good spot compared to their season average in points as well as season average in pace. Milwaukee, as always, is just going to find themselves in a great spot. They're actually in a slight pace down spot today against Detroit, but they're a 13-point favorite, so that does seem sketchy when there's no Drummond, no Blake, no Reggie Jackson now, and you're going to be rolling out there with, honestly, Christian Wood just is going to continue until he's probably closer to like a 9K player at this point, be heavily rostered in DFS. It's hard to get away from him when he is the premier player on this team with a hobbled Derrick Rose right now. Other games that stand out, you have a nice game here, at least in real life, Sacramento versus Memphis. It's a 0.5-point spread they're favored by right now, Memphis, so pretty much a pick 'em. A 228 total ends up being the third highest on the slate, 114.25 team implied total for Memphis, 113.75 for Sacramento. A lot of guys in this game that I do think are interesting. Some stand out a little bit above the rest, but a lot of them kind of fall to the middling of interests. That Houston and Golden State game, late night hammer, 231.5 total is actually the highest, 1 point more than Miami and Atlanta. Let's get into some of these early interests, and there's just so many. It's a slate that is grossly priced, and you can put that on a recorder and listen to it for the rest of the season probably, because I don't know what's wrong with the pricings this year, but as you can see right here, I literally listed way more than I usually do, 26 players of interest. In my player pool right now, I have over 60, so that'll probably get slashed down to around 50, hopefully, for a 6-game slate. But there are a ton of players that are viable today. This is listing them in salary preference order. So if you want those projections, you want to see them updated up until lock, you can get that over on Patreon. That is over there with interest pools and just point minute projections and a bunch of other stuff as well that I do for my every single day calculations over there. So the first thing that you're going to get today is Yanis at 11,100. Yes, there's other options up there like Harden. He's clearly fine today as well if you want to get there. I believe same price, but I do prefer Yanis if I had to pick one in a matchup against Detroit where Yanis is just playing huge minutes. And now the big concern is that they blow him out and he plays 26 minutes, but it's not like Yanis can't score 60 fantasy points in 26 minutes. He gets the matchup against Detroit, who has just lost everything at this point. With no Drummond, you're going to be rolling out there Christian Wood, Thon McCurr, Markieff Morris to try and stop Giannis at this point. That's not going to go over all that well. When you look at just overall defense from Detroit so far this season, they rank 24th in offensive rebounding rate percentages. And that was when Drummond's on the court for most of the time. So that's not going to get much better. They rank 17th in turnover differential for one of the best turnover-causing teams in the league in Milwaukee. Joel Embiid at $9,000 against Brooklyn is just as broken of a price point as it probably gets at this point. Joel Embiid, a player who just accelerates in so many different ways. Now, you're getting him averaging like 31 minutes per game. I have him projected today at 31. The usage is over 31 for Joel Embiid as well. And Joel Embiid right now is 31.4% usage rate. It ranks in the top percentile for centers. He's been absolutely fantastic there. His assist percentage ranks in the top 5 percentiles for centers at 18.6%. It's hard to ignore that as well. You know what you're getting out of Embiid. If you get the 30-plus minutes, which after the All-Star break, by all accounts, you probably should, unless we hear other news today, looks really fine. Miami, both Jimmy Butler and Bam. I prefer Jimmy Butler at 7,900, but Bam's still a strong option against Atlanta today. Both of these players stand out. pretty clearly in a matchup where they have the second highest implied team total in the slate. It's a huge pace up and points up spot from Jimmy Butler so far this season. Per cleaning the glass, 28% usage rate, top 6 percentile in the league. You got a guy who has a 28.5% assist percentage, and assist to usage rate is 1.02. Those numbers all rank right around the best in the possible league for your position. Absolutely fantastic. You look at Bam Adebayo, assist percentage for centers, 22.2%. We just talked about how good Joel Embiid is, hovering around 19%. Bam is an absolute monster when it comes to assist percentage. He gets the rebounding rate there as well, a 20.7% usage rate as well for a center. I do prefer Jimmy, but both of these guys look really strong. De'Aaron Fox is always a guy that I get to. He's 7,400. I project him for pretty much 34 minutes every time he's out there, because if I don't project him for that much, the only reason he's not playing that is due to a blowout, or in this game, again, a half a point spread, or is due to an injury, or just something, foul trouble. So at $7,400, if I give him 34 minutes, a guy with a 33% usage rate and a 35% assist percentage, yeah, I'm going to get myself a good amount of De'Aaron Fox at 7,400. Christian Wood's hard to ignore. He's a 1.16 fantasy point per minute producer when you take Blake Griffin, Reggie Jackson, and Andre Drummond off the court. And he has a good sample of about 400 minutes of doing that so far this year. If you tell me that he's a 1.15 guy, right around there, right? And then you also want to tell me that he's going to play huge minutes just because he has to, even if those huge minutes, because Markieff Morris picks up some more run maybe, and they want to keep running Thon McCurr for some reason, even if those huge minutes are only 33 minutes and not 36 to 37, he's still going to be great. I have him at 34 minutes today. Really hard to get away from that type of production. Buddy Hield at 6,600, whether they're going to start Corey Joseph over him or he's going to actually start, he should still see 30-plus minutes of work in a close game. You get a guy at exactly a fantasy point per minute production, 6,600, maybe not one of the most obvious values on the slate, but he does stand out. Jaren Jackson Jr., $6,000. They aim to play him 30 to 32 minutes a night. He's a 1.09 fantasy point per minute producer this year. I have him at 30 minutes. He looks pretty good. Derrick Rose, the concern is, what does the minutes look like? Look, he's had a week off. He played, and maybe they say, okay, we want to keep giving you a little bit more run to get your legs back under in these games. We'll put you at 25 minutes, 28, because obviously injury concerns for Derrick Rose are a real thing, and they had him on a very strict minutes limit for the first month to month and a half of this season. So he was on a minutes limit in that first game back. We'll see now with no Reggie Jackson and a week of rest if he's just going to play his full 30 to 32. I have him at 28. Even at 28, he looks good. Bielitsa playing 33 minutes a night. I have him at 33 today. 5,900 looks fine. Robert Covington playing huge minutes, 35 plus in his 2 games as a Houston Rocket. If I put him at 33, he looks okay. If I put him at 34, he looks good. If I put him at 35, he looks very good today. Thad Young at 5,400. There's going to be issues in this backcourt or this front court without a doubt due to all the injuries for Chicago. You'll see at the bottom of this list is a ton of names from Chicago, because right now you can project any of them for 20 or 24 or 25 minutes, and whichever one you do, they'll look pretty good. Really, whoever starts at that point, but Thad Young is going to be starting. Matchup against Charlotte is very good. If you're just talking about pure defensive rebounding rates and things like that, it's one of the better ones that you can find in the league right now. Points per possession wise, so far this season, Charlotte ranks 4th worst. They rank 27th in the league, points per possession with 114.2. They're allowing the 4th highest effective field goal percentage to the opposing team. That's not great. And then if you want to look at offensive rebounding rate, they are the 2nd worst team in the league in offensive rebounding rate, meaning that they allow a lot of defensive rebounds to the opposing team. So this is why this means so much. Thad Young obviously will play a lot at the 3 with no Hutchinson, probably some at the 4. But when we get down to the bottom of this list, all these Chicago guys versus Charlotte today, they're in one of the best spots they can be for rebounding, for just opportunities and shooting averages, effective field goal rates. So it's going to be important to see who starts there. A couple more guys in this range. Bruce Brown, see a bump with no Reggie Jackson. Damian Lee at 5,200 is appealing to me, but I'm probably going to get to another player from this team who's a little bit cheaper, but Damian Lee still appealing. Should play 28 to 30 minutes, point per minute producer around there. Jay Crowder at 5,000 now, part of Miami. Have him at 30 minutes. He looks okay. Doesn't stand out head and shoulders, but if you give him a little bit more of a point per production boost, it does look good. But if Butler and Bam are going to be out there, maybe not as much needed there. I have Al Horford on this list at 5,000. I will leave it at this. I do not like playing Al Horford when he's on the court next to Joel Embiid. He's like a 0.7 fantasy point per minute producer. He has been terrible. He's nowhere near his 0.9 something average that he is on the season overall. But he's $5,000 now. In the last game before break, they did play him off the bench, but they did not just directly play him as backup center. Now, they can easily do that, and you only get 18 minutes out of Al Horford. If he picks up any ownership at all, he's a guy I'll get away from. If he's playing off the bench and not next to Embiid for his full 28 minutes, it's a lot better than him, but I'm not sure they continue to do that. Matchup against Brooklyn is as good as it probably can end up getting for a guy like Al Horford. You still have Brooklyn so far this season, though, becoming a lot better in terms of their defensive rebounding rates. Instead of being one of the worst teams in the league against centers they're actually middle of the pack. They're ranked 14th out of the 30 teams. So defensive rebounding rate for Brooklyn at least has gotten a lot better. Their turnover percentage is their main issue. They rank bottom 5 in that department, but that's not going to matter too much for a guy like Al Horford. Duncan Robinson, 4,900. He's a wing against a weak Atlanta team that should play big minutes with likely no Tyler Hero and Myers Leonard in the rotation today for Miami, so it looks okay. Kobe White, again, no Chris Dunn in the rotation, no Hutchinson. He should play 28 to 30 minutes at $4,700, and he's a strong point per minute producer against a team that allows a lot of good shot opportunities. Daniel House, 4,600, only interesting versus Golden State if there's no Eric Gordon. He should then play 34 plus minutes. PJ Washington, 4,500 versus Chicago. This is a matchup against Chicago where they're missing all their bigs today. You're going to be able to likely feast on a Chicago team that already ranks bottom 10 in the league in rebounding rates, and that's when they at least have some of their backups to their starters, and now they're going to have backups to backups in. So Washington looks pretty good today at 4,500. Josh Richardson, first game before break, started his first game since getting injured, $4,200 today. If he starts again, he'll play 32 minutes. I haven't projected that. It just looks good. The issue is that he hasn't been great consistently all year, and at 4,200 on this type of a slate, there might be better value. The guy after him, Jordan Poole, will remain in the starting rotation. I have Jordan Poole for 31 minutes in a nice pace and scoring environment spot against Houston. It's hard not to like Jordan Poole at 4,000 when maybe he's not great, but who's left on the team to shoot? Andrew Wiggins is your shooter. Damian Lee is your best shooter on the team. So Jordan Poole has been shooting. He has been playing very well, and the price tag of 4,000 is appealing. D'Anthony Melton, over a fantasy point per minute producer this year at the same price point of Jordan Poole. Not going to play the exact same minutes, 30 plus, but even if I give Melton 23 minutes, 24 minutes, it looks really good. And then you get these bigs for Chicago. Luke Cornett at 3,700, Cristiano Felicio at 3,000, and Daniel Gafford at 3,000. Gafford did return, was active for the final game before the All-Star break, just didn't play in it. So if he's active today, well, then we'll see how many minutes he plays. Maybe I'll put him at 18, 20 off the bench. If he starts, well, then I'm going to put him at like 28 to 30. Whoever starts here, if it's Cornett, I'm just going to end up giving him like 26 to 28 minutes, and that guy will look the best. But it's really difficult because you have Cornett who can play power forward. I imagine that they'll put him there some. I don't just expect them to not run Cristiano Felicio. If you have a situation where Gafford is starting and Cornett's not starting, well, then I probably would just have no Cristiano Felicio shares. Maybe I'll project him for some minutes, but in that scenario, I would probably see something like a Gafford 24, Cornett 24 split. Cornett maybe picks up a couple more minutes at the 4, and then maybe you get Gafford for like 4 minutes at the 5. But right now, it's a little bit all up in the air. The bigs are all a mess with no Carter, no Laurie still, and then you still have no Hutchinson, no Valentine, so some of those power forward options and small forward options are gone. It'll be interesting to see what they roll with the starters, but in as good of a matchup as it gets, second worst rebounding team in the league in Charlotte, you're going to find yourself, and again, bottom 4 in effective field goal percentage allowed, you're going to find yourself probably rostering a Chicago Bull tonight, and that doesn't feel great, but they're just dirt cheap, and you don't need them to do too much as long as they're going to be pretty much in line for 24 plus minutes. So that's it. That is the first video back from the NBA All-Star break. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Be sure to hit the like and subscribe button. The major things on the YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe and the notification bell. Let me know in the comments down below, who are you most excited to roster tonight? I don't know who I'm most excited yet because there's just so many great options at this point. Somewhere around maybe Jimmy Butler, Christian Wood early on look like guys who are somewhat exciting, but there's just a pool of guys below 5K who are value that maybe have upside in the 30 plus range. And also, if you're listening on the audio version, before you exit out of this app, before you do whatever you do, you can just take a couple seconds, whatever you're on, Spotify, Apple, Google, whatever you are, just hit the follow button or the subscribe button. Helps me out a ton. Really helps us hopefully maybe cracking back into the top 10, maybe even the top 5. And then if you are on Apple or Stitcher or wherever you can leave a review, you take a couple seconds, you scroll down once you're on the podcast page, and the review section will come up. I do appreciate that a lot. My name's Sal. Check out Fantasy Draft. Check out my Patreon exclusive projections. Peace out. Game. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed that video. Above my head, if you're not already subscribed to this channel, I do ask you if you can please hit that subscribe button. Helps me out a good amount to reach more people. You can also follow me on Twitter. That's over there. Right in the corner is my @SalVetriDFS Twitter. And then above, you'll find my Patreon link. You can click on that if you want more exclusive content for me, or a video is going to pop up. So why don't you check that one out as well? I think it's going to be beneficial for you. Thank you so much again for tuning in, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.